Live Fit Podcast, episode 122. Be your own yoga teacher with Or Shahar.
You take your neurosis everywhere with you. Like I can say from personal experience that being in India definitely made my experience deeper because the approach of the teachers there, but there is a bit of a more spiritual approach that sometimes in the West is kind of not very present or not present enough. But yeah, it was not that different from practicing here. And I personally, because I've been here and there so often, I can really say that if you really want to deepen your practice, you don't have to go to India.
Welcome to the Live Fit Podcast with Glenn Johnson, your resource for all things that contribute to good health. You will hear expert advice and interviews with leading authorities on fitness, food, fat loss, mindset, and the mind-body connection. You will find show notes, articles, and health programs at livefitpodcast.com.
Yes, it is time once again for the Live Fit Podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Johnson, your guide to better health. Today's guest is Or Shahar. Or took her first yoga course over 10 years ago during her first trip to India at the age of 18. 5 years later, recovering from depression, she took a plane to India again where she discovered her deep connection to Buddhism, took her first yoga training course, and started to practice seriously. For the past 4 years, she has taught yoga in the Berlin area while deepening her own practice and teaching others how to become their own teachers. On her website, Or helps yoga practitioners improve their skills and deepen their practice in a way that works with their schedules and their budgets. Hi, Or Shahar. Did I say that right?
Or Shahar. Yeah,
Or
that was
Shahar.
pretty good. Yeah.
Well, pleasure having you on the show today. For our listeners'
Thank you.
benefit, give us a little bit of your history. What brought you from where you were to where you are now?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Israel. This is where my strange name comes from. It has actually a very beautiful meaning. It means like something like the light of dawn or something like that.
Nice.
So yeah, that's a really beautiful name. And this is how I kind of started. When I was 18, I started to practice yoga in my first trip to India. My crazy sister kind of dragged me there, and that was kind of my first encounter with that, which was great. It was a great place to start with yoga, like really at the source, you can say. And I had some really amazing teacher there. Yeah, and then it kind of became something that always stayed a part of my life, sometimes more, sometimes less, but it always kind of in the back of my mind. And in my early 20s, around 10 years ago, I started to suffer from clinical depression.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that kind of periods of time, of course, my practice was very irregular and sometimes also not even existing, but it was still something that when I started to recover was the first thing that I've done.
Oh, yeah?
And that kind of led me to be even more curious about yoga and wanting to go even deeper and understand even more and really make it a part of my life and not just this one class a week that I was doing. And that kind of led me to go to India again and again to this teacher. And I met a lot of other teachers. I went really, really deep into Tibetan Buddhism as well. And yeah, since then it became even a bigger part of my life that it's still, every day something that I try to use in every situation. And around 4.5, 5 years ago, I decided to move to Berlin. It was also after a very long visit in India, and the same crazy sister was already living here and kind of pushed me to come back to Berlin instead of to come back to Israel. And when I came here, I was really kind of at the point in my life when I said like, yeah, I need to find some kind of something to do with myself, which is not just jobs here and there. I didn't had any much formal education because I was just traveling too much and recovering and, was busy with this kind of stuff. So I decided to just become a yoga teacher. And that in and of itself, it's still quite of amazing journey.
Well, it's a great skill to have because it's pretty universal. You don't have to speak the verbal language because there's the body language that speaks for you. And yoga teachers are needed in small towns and medium-sized cities and huge cities alike. So it's not a bad choice for somebody who is kind of looking for a home.
Yeah, definitely. And it was also, I think, a home for me. And it helped me to find home also here in Berlin. And it helped me to get more grounded here, which is something that at the time I really, really needed. Yeah, but I still had to learn German and in order to teach in German.
Yeah.
And
there
I
are some
speak
things
German
you need to know.
pretty good right now, but it took some time, definitely.
Yeah, I have some heritage in German. My grandmother was, I think, 100% German, if I recall. I've never been there, and I know only a few words, but someplace I'd certainly like to visit someday.
Yeah, I recommend to come in the spring because now it's really not very nice here.
No,
But
I shouldn't come in midwinter.
Yeah, not the best time to come here. But spring is amazing in Berlin and autumn as well. Yeah, I can really recommend that.
Yeah. I love your immersion therapy or education into yoga. It's a lot like if somebody was going to learn a foreign language. And I've heard of people going to India before to learn yoga, and that always appealed to me quite a bit because I've taken yoga classes at yoga studios and at fitness clubs, and I've taken them once a week and 2 and 3 and 4 times a week, and definitely more is better. And it's I don't know. I want to say it's when you do it more often, it's like a religion, but I don't want that to be misunderstood with how I mean it. It's more part of a lifestyle, I guess, is a better thing. And that's only, I'm still living in this Western world and attending a gym or studio several times a week. I can't tell you how much I benefited from that every single time. And I was almost like floating on clouds the entire week just because I was going to yoga so often. So what was it like to be in India learning yoga and practicing yoga?
You take your nine roses everywhere with you. Like I can say from personal experience that being in India definitely made my experience deeper because the approach of the teachers there, not all of them, unfortunately, many of them are also very, very westernized, but there is a bit of a more spiritual approach that sometimes in the West is kind of not very present or not present enough. But yeah, it was not that different from practicing here. And I personally, because I've been here and there so often, I can really say that if you really want to deepen your practice, you don't have to go to India. Like it's a great experience to have in and of itself, and it's really good if you want to open your mind to something completely different and completely different culture. It's in and of itself like a really good mindset kind of a practice, to just live some time in a place where the culture is so extremely different. Mm-hmm. But from the point of view of the practice itself, I think, yeah, as I said, you take your neuroses everywhere with you. And the neuroses that I needed to deal with in Israel or the neuroses I have now in Germany, they are the same when I go there. Right. And I think what we do a lot in the yoga practice is we really confront this, especially also in the meditation practice. Like you really confront your crazy mind. And you learn how to work with it better. And of course, when I was in India, it was in a way easier because I was disconnected. Right. Which is also a choice that I made. Like you can still be very connected even there. Like it's not like they don't have Wi-Fi also there, but you have more places that don't have it. And it's less stable. And you don't know anybody. So of course, in this way, it was easier to kind of detox myself from a lot of influence that I had at home and to go deeper into my practice. But again, you don't have to go that far away from this. You can do this detox and cut a lot of things from your life in order to deepen your practice everywhere.
Yeah, I like what you say about you take your neurosis with you. And I hear attitudes from people who are overweight primarily that tend to think their life will be better or perfect and they won't have any problems and their, whatever issues they had that made them overweight are suddenly going to disappear if they can lose the weight. So it's kind of like getting the cart before the horse. They are
Mm,
working on how do I even put this? They think that that solving the symptom is going to solve the problem.
mm. Yeah, and I had this mindset in different ways as well. This is why I always say, yeah, like I always thought, like if I just come back to India, there my life will be amazing. And it is kind of amazing the first few weeks because you're like all excited and everything is, so amazing there and tastes so good. But yeah, especially because I stayed there for longer amount of times and I was there really to study and to practice and not so much to travel. So pretty fast, especially like the last time I was there for an extended amount of time. I was there for almost a year.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I had a volunteering job there. I had, an office. I had, relatively normal life. So being in India didn't change that much in this sense. And I think this is one of the things that cause us the most suffering in our life, all across all kind of aspects of our lives, that we kind of tend to believe that there is some kind of a magical place that then we will be happy. And I'm sure you know this, and a lot of people talked about it also before me, if you cannot be happy now, you wouldn't be happy anywhere. Even if you have like, a new job or a new body or a new place where you live, it's happiness. It's more like a habit that comes from within. That's kind of like the motto of my brand, happiness comes from within. This is why I do yoga and this is why I do meditation, because it enables me to discover this happiness that it's within me and it's not dependent on anything. Because if your happiness is dependent on something external, the chances that you will get disappointed at some point or another are very, very high.
Well
So that's
said.
kind
Well
of,
said. Yeah,
yeah,
if
that's,
I'd like to repeat that just because it's so important. Happiness is if you look for happiness outside of you, you're going to be disappointed. Isn't that pretty much what you said?
yeah, because it's dependent on external factors, and external factors are, yeah, this is the world that we live in. It has a lot of positive side. It sounds kind of morbid, but it is like that. Everything ends, everything changes constantly. This is like basic Buddhist premises.
Mm-hmm.
And if you hang on something which doesn't really exist because it's always in a constant change, of course you will get disappointed. And I think weight loss, it's a very good example of, if I lose this weight, then I will be happy. But then you will need to want, to lose even more weight, or, you will find out that it was actually not what making you happy and you will be even more disappointed. And I think there's this quality of just relaxing the mind. And this is what we do in yoga and meditation. We just relax the mind. We slow down. We bring our attention to the body, to the breath. We use the body and the breath as objects that are constantly changing and that are constantly in the present moment. So this is at least how I try to teach it. And when you look at your body and at your breath from this point of view, it's very different from looking at your body as something that is uncomfortable or looking at your body as something that is a hindrance in your life. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Yeah, a lot of people do see their body as a hindrance. They hate their body. They are not comfortable in their skin. What can yoga help with this?
I believe it is. I wouldn't sell it's the same way that, when I tell my story, I always say, like, I don't see yoga as a cure for depression. I also don't see yoga and meditation as a cure for weight loss. It's not that direct, and it depends a lot of what kind of yoga do you do and why do you do it also, and what kind of a teacher do you have. But I think it can be a supporting factor, especially like you always teach also, like in the mindset point of view. Like at least the way I teach yoga, I couldn't count it as an exercise. You wouldn't get any cardio with me. And there are teachers that teach yoga in a different way. I see it more as mindful movement, and is a way to reconnect with your body and reconnect with your mind and expand your mind also, and make your mind something that you can work with and you can change and you can observe and really learn from your mind and your thoughts patterns and learn from your body instead of kind of working against it.
And that goes back to what you said before about confronting your problems instead of ignoring them or avoiding them.
Definitely. In yoga, you constantly coming to problems, because we're trying to do sometimes quite challenging poses, for example. And for many people, even just standing on one leg can be something quite challenging, just to find the balance and just hold it for a few breaths. And of course, standing on one leg, it's not something that can help you in daily life. It doesn't have any practical use in this sense, but it has the practical use of, for example, learning to just fall and just be okay with it and just try again and try again and try again. So that's something that I heard from one of my teachers, and something that I really preach lately, because I think it's mostly the mindset that matters, and it's mostly the mindset that we practice during yoga, just trying again, just learning to work. Also, a sentence that I always like to use, work according to your own wish and abilities in a very honest and direct way. Because a lot of people, again, all across different aspects of our life, it's if it's weight loss or if it's trying to practice yoga and meditation regularly, we come with so crazy expectations. And again, I'm going back to this expectation and disappointment thing. And we don't really work with our real wishes and with our real abilities. And this is something that I try to emphasize very, very strongly, because even in yoga, sometimes people kind of push themselves, way too much, only to hurt themselves or to create a negative kind of experience, instead of kind of seeing where your limits are and working within these limits, so you don't challenge yourself too much and go over these limits, but you're also not too lazy. Like you are just kind of playing with this limit, and this limit, obviously, with time, if you keep practicing, it's widened. It's becoming bigger. You are able to take much more and to do much more with time. So
what would you say for somebody who just doesn't trust their abilities? And I reference weight loss a lot because that's what my listeners are often interested in, but this goes with any physical, even action, even mental trait itself. If you don't have trust or faith, if you do not believe that you can accomplish something, how do you accomplish it?
You try. I don't know. That's just the first kind of thought that comes into my mind. Like, if you don't believe that you can do it, you probably didn't even try it. This is what I also hear a lot about. Like, I go around in the world, I tell people I'm a yoga teacher, and they tell me like, I'm not flexible enough, I'm not strong enough. And I was like, you come to yoga in order to become flexible and strong. Like it's not a prerequisite. It's like the goal of why we are doing it, like one of the goals at least.
That's funny. And I hear that a lot about gyms. People say they're not going to join a gym until they lose the weight and get fit.
Yeah, that's kind of a paradox, and I always say, it's either you make excuses or you make change. You cannot make both. And if people, it's maybe a bit harsh, but I will just see it as an excuse, like I don't think I can do it. Or I cannot imagine myself doing it. It's not so much about, this thing not being possible. It's more about maybe your lack of imagination.
Could be.
Yeah. And I just say, people, just try, just start wherever you are, as small as it might be and as simple as it might be, just start, just take action. Because mostly with yoga and meditation, I know a lot of people that afterwards you really regret it. Like, why didn't I start it before?
Oh, yeah.
And you don't want to wait for years to be spent, and you don't want to, wake up being very, very ill or just being very, very sick, because it will happen one day. We don't like to talk about it in our society. And again, I don't like to be morbid, but it's just the truth of the matter, and it has also positive effects.
So it is the circle of life. If, people understand it in concept, but when it's coming up to them or their loved ones, they fight it. And, there's also the kind of the frailty of youth in mentally not
Definitely.
really understanding that. And young people tend to do things that limit their quality of life later in life. They make bad decisions that kind of degrade their body, whether it's smoking cigarettes or playing sports that are really beating up their bodies bad. And, to have a bum knee at the age of 30 has got to be horrible, because how many more years are you going to live hobbling around on this bum knee?
Yeah. Yeah, and this is why I say, you don't want to wait until it's too late. You don't want to hang on to your excuses until, it's maybe too complicated because you're in too bad of a shape to start yoga. And I know that I had times when I was just like so mentally disturbed, yoga and meditation was not even an option. And, it really scared me, what will happen if I even try it out. And I'm so happy that I still kind of kept it in the back of my mind. And when I became better, I could use it in my life, and the tools that I had was already there. So I think, whatever life brings to you, the skills that you have and the things that you learn, you can always use them. It doesn't matter what your situation is. And especially in yoga, like at the time, maybe I didn't know it, but when I had a later episode of depression, after I already was already quite deep into Buddhism and yoga, I still experienced these kind of things. But there I could have go out of it much, much faster. And one of the reasons for that was that I also looked at yoga from a broader perspective. And I said, okay, like maybe I cannot do official kind of a practice, but I can use the guidelines that they recommend in yoga and in Buddhism to just see how I treat myself and how I treat others. Like basic ethic guidelines that every religion have. You don't have to use the Buddhist one or the yogic one. Every religion have these basic principles that everybody can use in every kind of situation. And that in and of itself just created a very stable ground for me at that time, and also later when I came to do, different practices, you can say even higher or complicated practices. And it kind of saved me, I have to say. And this is an aspect of yoga that people don't really like to talk about, but it's not an unimportant one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there tends to be certain types of people that do yoga from what I've seen. And what's most common, at least in my area and in the circles I've been in with yoga, is women over 50 tend to do yoga. There's very few men of any age. Yeah. There's a few women of younger ages, of course, but it tends to really gravitate towards women. What's your thought on the different sexes doing yoga? Is it not for men? Is that it? What's going on here?
No, I would never say anything like that. I actually know quite a lot of men that practice yoga, Some of them are even teachers, and some of them are also magnificent teachers. I know also a lot of younger women. Again, it depends maybe a bit on the circles when you are. And generally speaking, yes, like in the yoga world, there is like still, I don't know exactly, I never counted, but I would say a good 85-90% women. But it's also just because this is how it's marketed. Like in yoga, actually, in India, in the good old days when yoga was just invented, women were not allowed to practice yoga.
And look at them now.
Yeah, look at them now. So I think, yeah, at that time it was totally a guy thing. Like there is just some kind of certain, I don't want to go too deep into, the history of yoga and, the transfer that yoga have made from the East to the West. But somewhere along this transfer from different reasons that have a lot to do with marketing, to put it short, it became kind of a girl thing, but it is no way whatsoever a girl thing. And if people want, they can really just send me an email and I can send them links to wonderful male teachers. I have also a friend that she's doing courses only for men because they just feel more comfortable like this, that there is no, other than the teacher, there is no women in the class.
Right.
And they can just start where you are. Because as I said, a lot of people tell me, I'm not bendy enough to do yoga. I'm not flexible enough. It's kind of like a girl thing. And I was like, that's just an excuse. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Right.
And I think that as a guy, you have a lot of advantages in trying to practice yoga, and you will get the same benefits as everybody else. My father also does yoga and he loves it, and he's like almost 70. So
it's great for all ages, isn't it?
Yeah. There is a quote I really like, that yoga is for white people, black people, young people, old people, fat people, skinny people, just not lazy people.
Right.
Because it's work, it's not a magic pill. And if you're looking for one, I am not the kind of teacher who will try to give you that. It's work. You need to put the work. There is no other way around it. And I'm sure it's the same with any kind of other things in life. But I've seen it in the yoga and meditation realm mostly. That if you don't really put the work and you come just like once a month to a class, or, you practice very unregularly, then I don't know how much of support it can give you.
Right.
In whatever you're trying to achieve.
It's those things that you do most often that matter the most in your life.
Yeah, it's a practice. We call it a practice for a reason. It has its goals. I see mostly like the goal of yoga, if I can even put a goal on it, it's to really just achieve more inner peace. And that's, from my point of view, at least the most practical thing you can have, because if you have this kind of inner peace and you have more patience and you have more wisdom and you have more compassion, which is what I at least try to develop. Yeah.
I'm sorry, it sounds a lot like meditation.
Yeah, I see yoga as part of meditation and meditation as a part of yoga. I don't see them as two separate things. Again, with the transfer of yoga into the West, it got separated mostly because more or less in the same time, Buddhism also came to the West, and kind of Buddhism got very much associated with meditation, although Buddhism is much more than just meditation.
Sure.
And the same way about yoga, that it's just kind of like these physical exercises, but actually meditation is a part of yoga, and yoga it's a meditation in and of itself, just on the body. Like when we do yoga asana, these kind of postures that most people kind of recognize as yoga, we do them in order to, as I said, to put the body in a situation where I can focus on the body and on my breath, and I can strengthen certain muscles and become a bit more flexible. And originally, the reason they were doing this exercises, it's because it's more easier to focus on your mind when you're doing these exercises, but also in order to prepare yourself for meditation, like physically prepare yourself to sitting still very, very long.
Oh yeah, that's pretty hard. And that brings me back to a thought I have about why men don't gravitate towards yoga, and it's kind of a soft, quote unquote, wimpy sport, if you want to call it a sport. It's an activity, whatever that may be. Men tend to gravitate towards bigger, stronger, faster things, lifting, bench pressing and playing basketball and loud and rowdy stuff. And of course, that's a generalization because I know many men that do yoga regularly. I'm a big fan of yoga myself, so I don't consider myself wimpy because I do yoga. Yet I do believe that's part of the holdup. And the other part is classically men are not very flexible. And it's discouraging when you're in a room full of people and they can all put their head on their kneecap and you can barely sit up straight.
Yeah, and a lot of teacher also makes you feel even worse about it. And this is why I recommend maybe go to a class that it's only men, or maybe start with practicing at home when nobody sees you. There are so many resources online, including my resources online. And you can just start with that. And I think practicing at home can be a really good start in, if you really feel like a group setting might not be very good for you. And also teaching yoga in group setting, it's a relatively, according to the history of yoga, it's a relatively new thing. It's a very personal practice. It's a very intimate practice with your own body.
So doing it at home by yourself might be the best option, especially for the shy men who don't want to be in a room full of women in yoga pants.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Or really like this kind of, as I said, like a closed group kind of a situation. It really depends on the person. I'm just kind of
that might be
the solution I had in mind.
I think I just hit on another reason why men don't like yoga. They look horrible in yoga pants.
Probably, yeah, but I don't wear yoga pants as well. I'm relatively short and I also look pretty horrible in yoga pants, I have to say. And I just wear comfortable pants.
There you go.
If yoga pants are really comfortable for you, you can do yoga with them. I wouldn't have any objections. But,
in order to home, you can wear nothing at all.
Yeah, if it's warm enough, why not? Or you can wear, your pajama. I practice, to be honest, most of the time in my pajama. And when I teach, I kind of wear something that it's like my pajama, but looks a bit better because, I'm teaching.
Right.
But as I said, yoga pants, it's really, again, it's an excuse that people use. You can use it as an excuse if you really need one.
Sure.
But you need to acknowledge it as really just a pretty cheap excuse even.
Yeah. Just say, I'm not ready to do that right now.
Yeah.
You said that you have some resources on your website. Tell us, what are those? And where can people find them?
Yeah. So you can just go to freedomyoga.info. freedomyoga.info. The freedom yoga, it's in one word, and then .info.
And I'll of course have that link on my show notes page at livefitpodcast.com.
Yeah, and there is a lot of resources about how to practice yoga at home, how to start to practice regularly. As you probably know me a little bit by now. So I talk a lot about yoga history, about yoga philosophy and theory, and really helps you to deep understanding of yoga. And I have also a program called Become Your Own Teacher. And this is really for people who don't just want to do yoga, but they also want to understand why are they doing this yoga and how they can make yoga more than just, a weekly class, or how can, it's a bit like a yoga teacher training in a way, but in the sense that it's much cheaper and much more flexible. And also you don't learn to teach, you learn first to teach yourself. And it's a lot about self-expression and a lot about, I give a lot of information, but I always encourage people very much to do their homework and to start a conversation with me. So I give also a lot of one-on-one support. as a part of this program, and I really help people in this journey to establish a practice that is meaningful for them, whatever that means to them, and that it's really a source of support in their life.
Now, your course is teaches you to be your own teacher. Can you give us your approach, more details on your approach? So paint us a picture. So somebody who's listening to this and they're considering doing yoga, maybe their schedule doesn't allow them to go to a class, maybe they're intimidated because they're new, maybe whatever other reason, maybe there's not a class nearby. For whatever reason, give us a kind of a real clear image of what they can expect to get from this course and why they would like it.
What you can expect is really to go on a journey. So there are 3 modules, and you can buy each one of them separately, or you can buy them together, again, according to your own wish and ability. But I start with, as I said, the very, very basic, because I find them so extremely important and so neglected in the yoga world. So I start with like the ethical, basic concepts of yoga, and really how first you can incorporate this in your life. So this is something that really anybody can do. You don't need any kind of body for that. And then I talk about in the second module about reconnecting with your body. So there I also give a lot of exercises, but I also mostly encourage people to find their own exercises and see what their body is capable of and what their body's needs at the moment, and really to establish a positive understanding of your body and also a positive connection with your body. And then I dive very deep into meditation, different kind of meditation techniques. I go very much in detail about, common obstacles and pitfalls that people unfortunately meet when they start to meditate. And of course, I always talk about how you can solve this and, finding individual solutions for people.
In my career, I talk a lot about physical activity, and some people try to reinterpret this as meaning exercise in a gym, lifting stinky, smelly, heavy pieces of steel. And the reason I say physical activity and not a gym workout is because that is exactly what I mean. And yoga certainly fits into that bracket of physical activity. Shoot, walking down the hall to the bathroom fits that example, and that might be all a person can do, and that is great. If that's all they can do, please, by all means, do that, because you're not going to get any better by not. And you have to push yourself a little bit beyond your comfort zone to get better. You're not going to get better. You're not going to learn if you're not a little bit uncomfortable. And yoga is going to be that way for a lot of people. And if it's not, they're already doing it. Yoga is probably not uncomfortable for you, and other people are shy from it, and they don't really understand the benefits that they can reap from it. I personally think that it is one of the greatest ways to move your body. And there's one thing that I always am kind of surprised by at the end of a yoga class. Every instructor I've ever taken says, take a moment to thank yourself for coming to this class because your body really appreciates it. And as soon as they say that, I do, and I realize, oh yeah, my body feels great. And there's been so many times when my mind is elsewhere. I'm taking this yoga class, I'm going through the moves, but my mind's on it, and I'm thinking of all these other things that I should be doing, would rather be doing, whatever it might be. And then I say that and go, all right, shut up, Glenn. You did a wonderful thing. It's only an hour of your life, and I've probably just added 3 days to my life by doing it.
Yeah, I also say it also in the end of my class, and also as a teacher, just being so thankful for the students to, just showing up. And I think that of course, the movement is such an important part. And without movement, there is no life and there is no fitness whatsoever. But I think that the thing in yoga that makes it even kind of more effective, it's that it's not just movement, it's mindful movement. Like you're really mindful of your body and you're really mindful of your breath if you're doing it right. And even if you are not, like you wandered somewhere else, but then as you said, your mind was somewhere else, but the teacher was good enough to kind of bring you back to this moment. And even if in one class you have just one moment when you were away and you came back, that's already one moment that you practiced coming back to the present moment. And that is priceless. That is really, a source of so much joy in our life, just to be able to be fully present in whatever it is that we are experiencing right now.
That is a perfect parting shot. Be fully present in what you're experiencing. Or, it's been wonderful speaking with you. I really appreciate the message you're trying to get out, that yoga is available and approachable and acceptable for everyone. Once again, they can find you at freedomyoga.info, and I will have notes from this episode and other forms to contact you at the livefitpodcast.com.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Live Fit Podcast. Please subscribe and share with someone you care about. Read show notes, articles, resources, and learn more about our weight management programs at livefitpodcast.com.